Welcome, friends, to another edition of Crime Time with DutyRon and Ed Wallace. We are two retired New York City police detectives, and if you like all things true crime related from the police detective's perspective, hit that subscribe button. It's a little red button in the corner. Hit that notification bell so you get all things DutyRon. And this guy over here, he poked me in the ear yesterday. That was not nice.
I gave him a wet willy.
Yeah, wet willy. He took the words right out of my mouth. That I was just about to say it. Ed, how you doing this morning? It's Saturday, the last day of 2022, and here we are talking about a perpetrator in custody, Brian Kohlberger, 28 years old, from the state of Pennsylvania, residing in the state of Washington, short 8-mile run from the crime scene. We're here to talk about everything forensics this Saturday morning with Ed Wallace. How's everything going on your end, Ed?
I'm extremely happy for the families involved. I'm extremely happy for law enforcement that they have this suspect in custody, and now he is a ward of the state of Pennsylvania temporarily until they can get through this extradition hearing and get him back out to Idaho to stand trial for his crimes.
Yeah. And, you know, we're fielding so many questions on DutyRon.com about the state of Idaho with capital punishment and things of that nature. And there's so many people that have questions that are unanswered. But we do know that the state of Idaho has the capital punishment law on the books. They do have the death penalty, as everyone is asking. But it's been over a decade since anybody's been executed in the state of Idaho. But before we get into this video, Ed, I want to say a special thank you on behalf of yourself and me, both of us here. We want to say thank you to the Patreon supporters, the channel members, and all of the folks who positively engage, especially our replay viewers and moderators and the people who leave comments down below. You guys are what makes this a great place. And you know, we have people from all over the world. Look, Gerda is here from South Africa. We got a whole bunch of people chiming in. Boxing MMA, our good friend Gary from good old Ireland, one of our old boxing MMA friends. So
yeah, Scotland's in the house, Indonesia's in the house, South America here. I don't know where in South America, but I saw that. I'm happy to have you all here.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to dig into the forensics with you because from the beginning of this case, you know, back in November when we started covering it, just on the, you know, just a couple, you know, maybe I think it was the 14th is when we started covering it, a day after these horrific murders took place. You were shouting out loud from the rooftops that this thing was going to be solved by the forensics and science, and not only computer science, but you know, the blood and the DNA and so forth at the crime scene. There was conversations about tremendous amounts of blood. We saw drips of blood on the outside of the foundation. Ed, you want to just give some of the people who are tuning in a little bit of what your initial feelings and thoughts were on this case, looking at it from, you know, the outside in?
Yes, I definitely thought that there was going to be plenty of forensic evidence in there that would link them to the suspect. But in and of itself, you know, that the evidence here was going to be something that would be used after the suspect was identified. You know, and it's turning out to be that way. Now, I'm not sure if the forensics in this case led them to them, or was it a confidential informant or a tip that led them to this suspect? Because I'm now finding out that this suspect was under surveillance for at least 4 days before the warrants were obtained and arrests were made. At least 4 days before all of this occurred. And so there could be a possibility of the crime scene forensics, and specifically DNA, being matched up to discarded DNA from the suspect who was under surveillance, and bingo, they got him. And they went into court and presented this to the judge and got the arrest warrants, search warrants, and so forth.
So, Ed, you think the possibility of forensic DNA, perhaps, and this is obviously we don't have access to the case file, is what led to their surveillance of him for 4 days before writing up those felony arrest warrants, and they had to build their case and get the piles and piles of evidence that would be enough for the district attorney to, you present your case to them and have the district attorney go before the judge and get a judge to sign off on these arrest warrants. Now, these FOAs, Ed, we know about them because obviously I worked in the Fugitive Enforcement Division. These are commonly done. We do them in New York City. They're done and executed across the United States. It's a process, and it could take up to 30 days. But I feel that this will be streamlined. You made a mention yesterday. Before we go into your mention, I want to say thank you to Yvette Durbin Girl from South Africa. Thank you for becoming a channel member. And also thank you to Kimberly Culp for the $10 super chat. You guys are the very best here. There is a happy year, and this is the end of the happy year of 2022. This couldn't have come at a better time. She says, Ed and Ron, and the wonderful mods, thank you. Thank you, Kimberly. Now, again, like I said, Ed, this process takes time, but you feel like maybe this guy is cocky enough to say, hey, I want to fight this extradition hearing. What was your thoughts on that? Your thought process on that one, Ed?
Well, given his background, his college education, his undergraduate master's degree are in criminal justice, criminology, and now he's going for his PhD. I would just thinking that he's thinking that he's smarter than the cops, he's smarter than everybody else, and that he's going to fight this in Pennsylvania. But we'll see. Time will tell. There's a court appearance on Tuesday, I believe, right?
I felt that he was going to waive the extradition. Court is going to be held on Tuesday. Initially, what they brought him in 8:30 yesterday morning. He was collared at 3 a.m. on Friday the 30th. But when they brought him in, I believe they just were actually bringing him in to tell him, listen, here's your booking charges here in Pennsylvania. You're being held on these fugitives of justice, the FOA warrants out of Idaho. And that was just a formality, of the legal formality that they had to go through. And then now Tuesday morning, they'll do the extradition hearing. And if he waives on Tuesday, Idaho should be ready to go either by commercial airline or driving them across that 2,500 miles. Now, we in New York City, and I'm going based on what I used to do, is we would get on a commercial plane and we would board that aircraft with our perpetrator and bring him back. But in this case, because it's he's wanted for 4 felony murders, I have a feeling you're going to transport him back. But there's going to be no conversation about that. They're not going to talk about it, how they're going to transport him for security reasons. So Dirty Jersey says that he said he is waiving extradition already. I don't know how that we can get that information or that communication, but if in fact that's true, that's a good thing because, again, he has legally up to 30 days to make a decision on it. And if he doesn't make a decision or say yes or no, he'll be extradited after that 30 days automatically. So
yeah, but I know he was brought in to court the other day, and he hadn't been appointed a public defender yet.
Right.
And so
so it might have been just a reading of the formal charges that he's being held there. In other words, you can't take somebody into custody and not tell them, hey, the reason why you're in handcuffs and you're in that turtle suit. Excuse me, that's a little bit of people were questioning that. Was that a bulletproof vest? No, it's an so we can't commit suicide while in custody.
There's so many parallels I see here with one of our famous serial killers that thought he was smarter than everybody else. Attacked young ladies in Florida in a college in a sorority house. Yes, Ted Bundy. Yeah. And he was at one point a law student, right? But he never did complete and get his pass the bar or anything like that. But again, he thought he was smarter than everybody else too. Yeah. And he got away with it for such a long time, but he was moving all over the country. So
Yeah, yeah, and there's so many conversations going on across the internet about this and the parallels. Pamela White, thank you for the super chat. We greatly appreciate it. We want to touch on in this hour that we have here with you guys. We want to touch on the law in Idaho, and you know what was interesting is KTVB7 did a piece April 28th of 2022 on the capital punishment and how it's all put together in the state of Idaho. It's a comprehensive interview, and I think it's important that we listen to this today. I know that most of you want to know, and there's people that say, let's fry this guy, let's get him in, and let's get him, you know, before. Listen, innocent until proven guilty. We know that. But, you know, there's people that are just furious with this case, and rightfully so. But there's a legal process, and Ed and I respect the judicial process, and we know it. Again, we're all afforded that under the Constitution. So I think it's important that some of our outside of the country folks see this, but also some of us within the United States to listen to this. So I want to play this quickly. I might not play the whole thing, but I want to play it for you guys. It's about Idaho's death row. So let's take a listen.
Here in Idaho, it's been nearly a decade since the state executed someone on death row. Recently, one of Idaho's longest-serving death row inmates made headlines. Gerald Pizzuto Jr. He's been on death row for 36 years.
Earlier this year, the Commission of Pardons and Parole voted to reduce his death sentence to life in prison instead. He's now terminally ill and no longer a threat to anyone, is what they deemed. That case is still being litigated, but it did get us wondering about all the intricacies of the death penalty and reasons why some, like Pizzuto, are on death row in Idaho for decades. Our Shira Matsuzawa looked into it.
Now, there are 27 states, including Idaho, that currently authorize capital punishment in the United States, and those states are in red. 3 of those states have a moratorium on executions: Pennsylvania, California, and Oregon. And as you're probably aware, the death penalty is complicated, and there are many people who play a role in it, including witnesses. Behind this fence sits some of Idaho's death row inmates. 8 people are currently on Idaho's death row, including 1 female, Robin Rowe. Idaho's longest-serving death row prisoner, Thomas Creech, was sentenced nearly 4 decades ago in 1983.
The death penalty has been taking longer and longer, and it's gotten longer over time. In 2000, the Bureau of Justice Statistics said that the average amount of time that an individual was on death row was 7.7 years. At the end of 2020, the Bureau of Justice Statistics said the average was 19.4 years.
Robert Dunham is the executive director of the Death Penalty Information Center. It's a nonprofit that doesn't take a position for or against capital punishment.
It takes a long time for cases to be properly looked at.
We spoke with L. Lamont Anderson, the chief of the Capital Litigation Unit in the Idaho Attorney General's office, to explain the process and why it takes so long. He says it starts with the trial. That's followed by the sentencing hearing.
If a death sentence is imposed, then they have what we call post-conviction relief.
From there, it can go through a complex route of higher courts, with some making it all the way to the United States Supreme Court.
Within that time frame, you can have successive post-conviction petitions that get the federal proceedings sidetracked. And so to do the review that is involved, at least in Idaho, it just takes a very long time.
So long that Anderson is still working on some of the same cases he started working on when he took the job 25 years ago.
We have 8 death sentence murders, and less than half of those are what you would call new cases. The others are old, from the 80s, 90s, early 2000s.
In 2014, the Idaho Legislature's Office of Performance Evaluations conducted a study of the financial costs of the death penalty. It found death penalty cases cost more than sentencing a person to life without parole, because capital cases take longer to resolve than non-capital cases. The last time Idaho executed someone on death row was back in 2012, when Richard Levitt was put to death by lethal injection. His execution came just 7 months after Paul Rhodes was executed.
It was very intense. It was very challenging. There's so many aspects that play into it.
Twin Falls County Commissioner Brent Reinke was serving as the director of the Idaho Department of Corrections when those two executions happened nearly a decade ago.
In that time period, it was very difficult to be able to acquire the necessary drugs to be able to carry out the execution. And so that was a very daunting task, working with a lot of other states and a lot of other jurisdictions, trying to understand where we might be able to acquire those, how that might be done. And then we did a tremendous amount of rehearsing leading up to that particular event.
Obtaining those drugs sparked controversy and a call for more transparency after reports say states like Idaho sent employees to pharmacies in other states with a suitcase full of cash to pick up the drugs to be used in the execution, which brought up questions about the drug supplier, as well as the nature of the drug and its efficacy.
Idaho also has as a very serious issue the question of secrecy and public accountability. The state has said that it's had difficulty in obtaining execution drugs. But when you look at the state's practices, you understand that it's engaged in cloak and dagger activities in trying to obtain the drugs.
Just last month, Idaho Governor Brad Little signed into law a bill that now increases the secrecy surrounding Idaho's execution drugs. A bill some say stems from what happened nearly a decade ago. Supporters of the bill say this was the only way the state would be able to continue to carry out lawful executions because no suppliers of lethal injection chemicals will sell the drugs to the state without guaranteed confidentiality. Looking back on the executions, Reinke called them the most difficult task you can have in the Idaho criminal justice system.
It's something that is permanent. And we want to do that, as I've indicated, with as much professionalism, dignity, and respect, which is what our governor asked of us, and that's what we provided. And I'm very proud of the men and women that carried that out. We made sure that we dotted every I and crossed every T so that we could carry out as the governor wished.
As part of Idaho's policy for executions, media witnesses are present on behalf of the public. Associated Press correspondent Rebecca Boone was one of those witnesses.
So it's an unusual thing in our state compared to some other states, but it's always kind of there in the background because you never know when the next one is going to occur.
She was there to monitor the execution and explain what happened so the public can then decide how they feel about executions and how the state is carrying them out.
They're quite serious. You're seeing somebody be put to death. It's hard to explain the feeling that you get when that happens because it is so far beyond the norm of what we experience mostly in our day-to-day life. There's the human element. You can't get away from the fact that this is somebody who comes into the chamber and they know they're about to die, and you know they're about to die, and everybody else knows they're about to die. And then there's families who are hoping this will be closure to the toughest, most awful moments of their lives. Like, it's just all around a very weighty moment.
And with every execution, co-director of the Idaho Innocence Project and the director of the Forensic Justice Project at Boise State, Dr. Greg Hempikian, says there's a risk of a mistake.
We've had over 1,500 executions since they made it legal again in 1976 in this country. We've had 187 people who are on death row exonerated, found innocent. So if we had rapid justice, and I think we do in some states, those people would have all been dead because it takes 10 to 20 years to get someone out.
Dr. Hempikian says that's a huge error rate.
I'm not here to debate the morality, just those numbers. And if you execute someone, there's nothing that all this equipment can do to restore anything to that person. I want them to look at the numbers because I think while we have a gut reaction to crime, and it's horrible. I get to have to see a lot of it. The numbers tell us that we do make mistakes. And do we want those to be irreversible mistakes?
While the debate about the morality of the death penalty continues, many involved in the process agree that transparency is vital to the process.
And it's important that people really understand what that's all about.
And I think we saw enough of that. I wanted people see how involved this is and how and why it takes decades and sometimes more to actually go through with an execution. They do it by lethal injection in the state of Idaho, but there's so much behind that. The forensics, the Innocence Project, things
appeals,
of that. Yeah.
you know, all kinds of appeals.
Yeah. So that's why sometimes some people will argue that life in prison is a better way, a better mousetrap, so to speak, to keep these horrific people behind bars once they are found guilty by a jury of their peers. I don't know. This conversation can go on and on because people will argue that, you know, in a case like this, if found guilty, this perpetrator who stands, you know, before the court took 4 people's lives. And there's some people who argue that, you know, a life for a life. But again, my takeaway from that last doctor, he said, we make mistakes, and we damn sure do, right? So that's the situation here. You have a super chat highlighted?
Well, yeah, the Susan A. writes, isn't it odd that the law enforcement organization to arrange cleanup while still holding it as a crime scene? Yeah, it's a little odd, but I understand that they used certain chemicals inside of the crime scene that are carcinogenic, and when you use those types of chemicals, it then falls on you to assist in the cleanup. But the cleanup was halted by court order. So I don't know how far they got into the cleanup, because it looked like they just were starting it yesterday when the warrants hit the news, and it seems like it was taken down relatively shortly thereafter.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, I want to show, that's the thing, is like, we were all confused about that, Ed. You know, like, hey, you're moving forward. They made a public statement on the Moscow Police Department. The chief said, hey, there's going to be activity. This was Thursday on the 29th. And said on Thursday, he said, you're going to see activity out at the house. We're going to be handing out over that location back to the property owners, and it will be clean, you know, by biohazard company, as we saw, came in, set up, and they were in the process. Newsnation was out there. I have the clip. I don't think I need to play it, but why the brakes pumped so quickly after this collar? And they knew 4 days that they were surveilling, and they had the arrest warrants a day before or so. Why the pump of the brakes, Ed? And that's the questions that we probably won't get an answer to. They know it, but we don't.
Well, I mean, to speculate here, it's probably, you know, they're dotting their I and crossing their T, and they don't want any claims from a potential defense attorney that, you know, they cleaned up the scene before we had a chance to look at it, or to do anything, or to hire our own experts. So maybe they were trying to stave off that from happening. And, you know, if they have a really strong case, which I think they do, I think it's all going to come together now that they have the suspect, and they're going to be doing deep dives into his social media, his text messages, his emails, his internet searches, his connection to the victims, and all of this. That they're probably going to have a very powerful case with the forensics, coupled with the forensics from inside of the house, and so they don't want to give any defense attorney reasonable doubt to a juror, because they have such a small jury pool coming out of this small town.
25,000.
Yeah, so they don't want to give that defense attorney the ability to make all these crazy claims in court to create reasonable doubt that, you know, hey, you know, we weren't given an opportunity to do this, that, or the other thing at that crime scene because they cleaned it all up.
Right. 100%. And I think that's the most important thing. And it's something that the chief has been clear about in all of his press conferences. They're not just looking to make a summary arrest and drag somebody in here. They're looking to arrest somebody, get a successful prosecution, and a guilty verdict at a trial if one is warranted. Deco Paint and Tea, thank you for stopping in. Happy New Year's in advance. This is New Year's Eve day here in the United States. So happy New Year's Eve day to those of you who are here in the United States. Those of you outside of it that may be into your new year, Happy New Year. Ed, they went over to this perpetrator, this alleged perpetrator's location over in Washington, in the state of Washington, Pullman. It's a university campus, I believe.
Housing.
Housing.
And his office. So
Right.
they did two separate search warrants. One on this location you're showing right now, where is campus housing, and the other is his graduate student office.
Yeah. Before we play this, I want to just make something clear here. The stoppage of the cleanup, the biohazard cleanup at the crime scene, was ordered by a judge in Latah County, I believe. It was ordered by a judge, not the defense for this perp. That's another false rumor that's swirling around. So I just wanted to make that clear. It was done based on a local court in Moscow, Idaho, and it was not done or asked to be done and stopped by the defense. Vet Girl, thank you. Happy New Year.
There was no defense in place at this time.
Correct. But I'm just saying that because I'm reading stuff on Facebook and Reddit and just all over the place. Even coming into DutyRon.com, people ask me that question multiple times.
Yeah, no, I've seen about the DNA that there are several reports, depending on who you listen to. There were several reports on news saying that familial DNA was used. There are other reports saying that there was DNA collected during the surveillance operation.
Right.
So, well, it's all going to shake out in just a couple of days when, unless this guy does in fact resist coming back to Idaho. But there's a lot of reports saying that he's going to waive it. Okay, we'll see when it happens. There's a court appearance on Tuesday. We'll see.
Right. Exactly.
So as soon as he gets back, though, and then he's served, and that filing can be released. Also, the warrant can be released. The information to obtain the warrant can be released at that time, and that's what was said in the press conference.
Right. That probable cause affidavit will be probably redacted in some way, shape, or form. But as I said, we weren't going to get anything from this press conference. I said it on WFLA with JB Live. I said it on here yesterday, and I knew before that press conference was went live that we wouldn't get a lot of information. But the probable cause affidavit will be released as per the chief. He actually said it during a presser. But it will probably be redacted in some way, shape, or form. And we know that the prosecution, the DA, goes to the judge and says, "Hey, look, we want to, certain things in that probable cause affidavit. We don't want that released to the public." So they'll make those statements. That's just the same thing with the crime scene cleanup. They halted that. We don't know how that all transpired, but the DA makes the request to the court, and the court grants it or denies it. And the court granted it to stop, and that's a good thing. I want to get your take on this. We see them putting booties on. It's a Mima Y'all XOXO. Do we know what pointed the detectives in the guy's direction? At this time, we do not know, but we do say that there's an extremely high possibility and chance that the forensic evidence, the science, the computer forensics, and so forth, and possibly leads from the public, right, Ed?
Now, I'm leaning more towards leads and tips because he wasn't in CODAS, but I believe he may have been in AFIS because of security work that he did. So
you want to talk about those two systems for the people that might not know those fancy words?
Well, CODAS is the federal FBI combined offender DNA database, for the nation, where all the local and state governments feed their DNA materials in there. And in there, you have a combination of crime scene DNA and actual DNA from named perpetrators or suspects that have been arrested on probation, parole, or whatever the case may be, that are known and in the system, known criminals that are in the system.
Right.
And it's comparison with the unknown and the known. So from what we can see, having no criminal record that would have his DNA on file, he wouldn't be in CODAS.
Yeah.
Okay. And not having served in the military, that I haven't found anything that suggests that he was in the military, then he wouldn't be in any of those civilian DNA databases. Okay. or or in this case, a military DNA database. AFIS is the automatic fingerprint identification system. So, his system, his fingerprints were taken most likely to do security work. And then background check has to be done on all security guards. Yeah. So then there's a possibility that those fingerprints are on file somewhere in the system. And, so there's a possibility that could have occurred, but I don't think so. I think what we're looking at here is probably a tip, and tip led to DNA. Now, or tip led to DNA, and coupled that with the fact that the guy was under surveillance for 4 days. He has a white Elantra. Right. Everything is pointing in this direction. Right. Now, could they use familial DNA or genetic DNA? Or yes, they would have had to submit the sample that was negative in CODAS, and then got to one of these specific genetic companies where law enforcement can use and compare. And maybe there was a family member in this person's family that had done something like this, and that profile was in there. Right. And they found a familial match. Right. And that all will be washed out soon enough.
Yeah, we'll get that once the trial commences, if there is a trial. Miranda Wright sends in a super sticker to $2. Thank you so much, Miranda Wright. Vet Girl RWB says Happy New Year with $20 in the super chat. Appreciate you, Vet Girl RWB, RW Bus. And then the Mystery Maven, our friendly attorney, who is always available to chime in with information, says Happy New Year. The request to stop cleanup could have been requested by Swant for the insurance claim purposes. It's very unusual because the DA would have approved it already. Yeah, we don't know. We'll find out, I hope, why it was stopped. But I think that, they've had that crime scene held, Ed, 7 weeks.
Yeah.
And what more could you need out of that? I want to talk to you about that. And I know you have a question up there that you want to get to, but after you answer this question that you have up on Bipolar Bear, why? And for some of our listening audience, can you explain after you take this question, why for 7 weeks would the detectives and the investigators and the prosecutors have to have that scene held? But I'll let you take that question.
Well, first let me get to Bipolar Bear. Said, Ed, the guy asked if anyone else was arrested. Do you think he was trying to get in the minds of law enforcement, or the others are involved as you suspected? Well, two things. One, Ted Bundy did the same exact thing when he was arrested, and he did that to throw off the investigators. So could that be here? It's a possibility. Or there could be a possibility that there are other co-conspirators that assisted in some shape, way, or form. It's all going to be washed out in the investigation. Okay. Now, to your question, Ron, historically, I've found when the FBI is involved in investigations, they hold scenes incredibly long. Right. Okay. Like, for instance, Gabby Giffords, when she was shot outside of a strip mall, the FBI locked down that parking lot and all the vehicles in that parking lot that had nothing to do with the shooting for over a week and a half.
Wow.
Okay, they just locked down that shopping center.
I remember that.
Okay, and it's like, I looked at that and I said, why are they doing that? I mean, it would have taken like two crime scene investigators from the NYPD, a couple hours to process that crime scene.
Yeah.
And gotten all the evidence that they needed to get, and so forth and so on. And so some of the things I'm left scratching my head. Why is this doing? But okay, there's no harm in being slow and methodical. Okay. Right. And there's no harm if you have the ability to hang on to the crime scene to hang on to it if you still have open questions. Or, if you're waiting for results from the medical examiner, or you're waiting for results from the lab that may send you back in there to look for something else.
But what would you think is the reason behind them opening the floodgates and saying, okay, we're opening it up and we're making a whole announcement and we're going to let it go, to screeching halt, brakes, jamming the brakes on and stopping it?
Well, as I said before, maybe there was some thought between law enforcement and the prosecutor's office. Hey, we gotta know. At this point, they know they got a suspect. Okay, let's slam on the brakes on the cleanup, so that we don't give this defense team an argument in court to create reasonable doubt, saying that that they didn't get an opportunity to have their experts look at this crime scene, and so forth and so on.
I've already presented that question to Pete Carrasco. I reached out to Joe Murray, but he's kind of wrapped up with a lot of his own cases, so he can't even comment or chime in with us. So we're going to get former prosecutor and criminal defense attorney Pete Carrasco after the new year to come on to talk about it. Let's take a peek at this. Let's answer the super chat first. Northern California Cubs fan sends it a $5 super chat, and we thank you for that. DutyRon and Ed, would it surprise you if a second suspect was arrested in this Idaho case? Ed's already chimed in on that. I wouldn't be surprised at anything. So,
yeah, especially with that body cam footage of people running in the background around the time of the homicide.
Right.
That's all got to get vetted out. All of that has to be nailed down. It could be nothing. Could absolutely be nothing. Because there's a lot of frat houses around that area, and these people walking all hours of the night back and forth to different parties. Yeah. But it's still got to get nailed down.
There's so much to go through. Hey, friends, hold your questions to the end, because we're going to open it up. As we like to do once in a blue moon, we're going to open up the phone lines for you guys to call in and ask Ed or myself or both of us any of your questions. Crime scene related, DNA related. Let's keep it on topic. So at the end of this, towards the back end, the last 15 minutes, we're going to open it up to questions. You guys can call in and you can ask us questions live. Ed, I'd like you to just critique this or just look it over. This is just them in the initial when they executed the initial warrant at this location. I believe it's the resident, and then they simultaneously did his office as well.
Yeah, so it appears to be on that first landing there, they're going to make entry
First to the left.
Yeah, on the apartment to the left, which would be that window to the left of G.
Right here where my cursor is.
Yeah.
We're going to see putting on booties, right?
Yeah, I do see that. I see the guy on the right putting on booties. But here again, it should be more than booties. It's the standard. It's the international standard. They should be tie-backing up.
Hey, wait a minute. I'm going to roll this back. I saw, is that the district attorney there at the top on the left? Ed, you're good at pointing these things out. Or somebody with a long white beard.
Is that the Santa Claus DA? Yeah, it looks like it.
I never called him that, but
no, that's what our people in the chat were calling him.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, because I didn't see his face. All I see was his beard. Let us know in the comment section if you think that is the. I think it is. He's leaning up against the wall there. They said the DA was there.
Yeah, well, long white beard. That's
the first time I recognized that. I didn't look at this that close.
Yeah, and that thing should be netted.
Look at this comment here by our good friend Karen, Legal Minded Friends in the UK.
Yeah, I don't.
All right, so,
not just my book. It's in every book, Karen.
I interrupted you. What were you trying to say, Ed?
About they should be wearing tieback. It's not just booties. They should have tiebacks and gloves, hoods, boots. He should be wearing a beard net. Okay. this is where we need to be in this day and age when conducting crime scene investigation. Of course, the Lacard's exchange principle. You have to keep yourself, your genetic material, your hairs and fibers from entering the crime scene, from being left at the crime scene. So, if you're not wearing Tyvek, then you can't say that you're doing that.
Yeah.
Okay. If you're not wearing a mask, if you're not wearing a hood, you can't say that you're doing that.
On behalf of our chat, I'm going to ask this question, Ed, because I already know the answer, or I know what you're going to say. What are they going in there looking for?
Well, they're going to go for digital evidence. They're going to go for the computers, the searches, paperwork. They're going to go for his research projects, any writings, any that he may have done for papers, or any journals that he may have had. They're going to look for evidence from the crime scene in his residence, hairs and fibers, blood, any, I doubt he took a trophy, but if he did, they'll look for any trophies of the crime committed to see if it's in here. Now, given his
access to the girl's complete, room. I mean, it could have went through. It took an article of clothing out of their dresser drawer. The knife. Thank you, Schmitty. That's a great comment right there. They might be looking for the murder weapon. But you would say,
yeah, the murder weapon, definitely. Yeah, but I'm given this kid's background in the college. I mean, I would think that's long gone. He ditched that. Okay. So forth. This just got me so frustrated looking at these things. These are like unforced errors.
Yeah, and it looked like multiple people going into that location from the district attorney's office and possibly investigatory folks from the state. Kat D, thank you for joining the memberships. And again, don't forget, Ed, this is in Washington State. This is not in Idaho. Right.
I know it's in Washington State. And so, they have a warrant that they got obtained in Idaho, and then they have to go into Washington State and then get permission from a court in Washington State and cooperation with the law enforcement agencies involved. So you have the University of Washington
Washington
State University Police. You may have the Washington State Police all involved in what's going on here.
Right. Pullman Police Department, multiple agencies now are involved. And this is not an uncommon occurrence. This happens all the time. But when you now are mixing in all these different places, and this looks like this truck that's parked right here looks like this would be some type of evidence collection unit or somebody, from a forensic team right here, possibly, because you see a black garbage bag on the back of it here. Do you see that down below?
Yeah.
I would imagine that this is a part of it. But Ed,
I would have guessed so, because they used it to tape up the crime scene tape. You wouldn't want some poor civilian to come out and say, I can't get my car out now because you guys used the crime scene tape around it.
Exactly. So going in there, they're looking for everything and anything when it comes to this case with evidence. That includes hair and fibers and so forth. And that's why you weren't saying it. I looked at some of the people in the chat. You weren't saying it to be funny, like you said, a beard net, but you got a long beard. Those hair falls out of those long beards.
Exactly.
Hair falls out of your nose. Hair can fall out of.
It's another reason why you wear a mask. Because as you're talking right now, as I'm talking right now, I'm expelling genetic material in my saliva and amylase. It's microscopic. It's latent. You can't see it with your naked eye, but it's happening.
Yeah.
Okay. So again, there's no exception to law enforcement for the Lacard's exchange principle. Okay. So you have to take precautions, and that's why we use PPE. PPE is used to protect the scene from us and to protect us from the scene, especially in the case of biohazards and other hazardous materials.
Hey, that brings me to the point that I want to bring up. I wanted to play that piece from Fox News that they had Nancy Grace on. This isn't her from her channel, but she went on the Ingram angle. I'm not, I don't watch a lot of Nancy Grace. Again, I wanted to play this because it's about some of the stuff that we're talking about. So I'm going to let this play. I'm not going to play the whole 6 minutes, but I'm going to play a little bit of it so some of the folks can see. So this was from last night, and let's take a listen to what she had to say.
Now with a preview. Nancy Grace, thank you for being here. I want to start with the idea that one of the reports that we got is that when they went in to capture him, that he said, "Am I the only one that was arrested?" What do you make of that? And give us your analysis of this whole case and where we are today.
Well, that would suggest that there is an accomplice. I want to point out two things. This guy has got a master's degree in criminology. He's currently working on a PhD in criminal justice. Yet he drove the getaway car all the way and parked it outside of mommy's house? Are you kidding me? Another thing we know about this guy, he has been described as obsessively vegan, to the point that he made his parents get rid of their pots and pans. Oh no, the bake process in the dishwasher wasn't enough. They had to buy new pans that had never touched meat. What does that tell me? He is obsessive. He is fastidious. He's about 6 feet tall. He's socially awkward. He planned this whole thing out. Did you notice the charges? He didn't go in to steal. He didn't go in to rape anybody. He went into that home with the intent to kill. How long had he been watching these girls? And as we...
I got to stop it there, Ed, because I just wanted to play the part about the vegan and buying the pans and so forth. But, you know, we don't have the complete report from the medical examiner's office. So she talked about, you know, that there was no sexual offense. And I think that they did make a statement that there was no element in that when questioned. But all we have is cause and manner, right? So there's not a lot of details, and we won't get those details until this thing goes to trial, if it goes, and they will bring that up in a trial. So what's your thoughts on this obsessive behavior and so forth? Because you and I talked about it offline.
Well, I mean, that's just a part of his psyche here. That's going to be a part of the trial as well. You know, like I said, he was doing all kinds of research on offenders who have committed crimes. You know, and you know, many in our chat, we talked about this in the other broadcast that we had recently. I said, you know, given his college background, let's look at his papers, look at some. And then they reached out to me and said, hey, look at Reddit. And sure enough, I did. I looked at Reddit, and there it was, everything that I was saying. He had done all this research, but guess what? Research only brings you so far in what you're doing analysis of. Okay. And maybe he didn't get exactly what he was looking for from the research. And maybe in this man's warped mind, that the only way that he could get what he was looking for is if he committed the crime himself. So, you know, let's see how this all plays out. It's quite interesting, you know, and, you know, I'm still troubled by the fact that, you know, he was arrested in his sleep, right? He was sleeping at home in his parents' house. You know, and that says something to me too, because typically the only people who can sleep after something this heinous are sociopaths, psychopaths, and people who have done it before and know, you know, and know what the system is like and what's going to happen to them if they get arrested, and just don't care.
Yeah. And that's concerning here, because we had Dr. Joni Johnston on, who's a forensic psychologist. She's a clinical and forensic psychologist. And earlier on, she mentioned to us that she didn't feel that there was any serial killer type element to this. And she mentioned that, and she was loud and clear about it. And I'd be curious to see what her thoughts are now that these Reddit posts and some of his writings and some of the things that he will claim, as you and I spoke about, that this was for his educational, higher education purposes and so forth, and it was part of his school, you know, what he had to do. So, you know, defense attorneys are going to jump on this and say there's nothing wrong with that. You know, he was doing an assignment that he had in college. So, I have a piece from Cuomo's Newsnation, and one of our good friends, Jennifer Coffendopper, was on there with Chacon and the crew. I want to just play a little bit of that, but there's so many great questions, and in 5 minutes we'll come back and we'll take your questions live. I'll share the link. Ed, are you down for that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Hey, listen, one last thing before you do this. Good luck with that vegan diet in prison.
Yeah, it's not going to work out well. That's for sure.
And getting fresh pots and pans for your food.
Yeah, that also is not going to work out well for him. Hey, I'm going to post the chat, the StreamYard link. You got to enable your camera and you got to show us who you are before you come on. But keep the questions forensic related. Let's not go into wild speculation or, things of that nature. Let's keep it on topic here. You know that we like to do that. But let's play this little piece and then we'll take your questions. If you guys want to join, come on in one at a time. Single file. Only because Ed likes single file.
Also, and this is probably the easiest thing for us to speculate on. Bobby, you've run investigations like this. My speculation is the last thing they want to do is swing and miss. It's not like they got this guy at the airport on his way out of the country. Take us inside the room in terms of making a decision about making an arrest in a high-profile situation like this. I know you always want to be certain that you can make probable cause, but what's the heightened sensitivity here? How real is it?
Well, you have prosecutors, Chris, that are going to possibly seek a death penalty in this case. Death penalty cases have a much more reviews, much more appeals, and they're just much closely more watched. And so you had the agents or the detectives working together, and they're really waiting to see when the prosecutors are comfortable going forward, because that's who's going to stand up in court, right? And so they had to be very certain, not only that they had enough probable cause to get an arrest warrant, but they have enough to prove at trial and get the conviction, or else they wouldn't go forward. Remember, with double jeopardy, we get one shot at this. So I think that they have, we're talking about this piece of evidence or that piece of it. I think they have multiple pieces of evidence. I think they do have his DNA at the scene that matches the DNA they got him. I think they may have a witness that may have seen him leave that house that night. I think that they've got, they've got the car and somebody that may have been in that car. I think there's multiple things that they have that built up to this case. We'll find out a little bit of that when the probable cause affidavit's released. We won't find all of it out because the prosecutors like to hold back. They just need to meet that probable cause burden in that affidavit. They don't want to give their whole case away yet. So we'll find some of these answers out. Unfortunately, we won't find all of them out next week.
I agree with Bobby right there, 100%. What's your thoughts on that, Ed? And we have Jessica. When she gives us a thumbs up, we'll add her in for the question.
Yeah, I'm 100% on board with Bobby as well.
Yeah.
And here's another thing too, folks. They need to start looking at this guy for other crimes. This might not be his first here. So how long has he been here at this school? And then look at him for other crimes that may be similar in nature.
Right.
Also back in Pennsylvania, they need to start looking there too.
Right.
At him for some unsolved crimes there.
100%. I agree. Nothing should be left not looked at in this case. Okay, Jessica, as soon as you give us the thumbs up, we'll add you in for your question. All right, there she goes. Jessica P. With her Peloton shirt. How are you, Jessica?
Good. How are you? Thank you.
Hey, where are you watching from?
I'm from New York, so not too far away. Your hometown there too. So a little upstate from New York City. But
what's your question?
So there was obviously some talks earlier on with some other cases that were similar in nature that were kind of unsolved. So I was kind of curious how that would work now that they have his DNA and how other agencies would be able to, I guess, go about cross-referencing to see if maybe he was a person of interest, given that they were kind of near the Idaho, Washington area.
This is you,
and Ed. I have one, if I can do like a two-parter.
Okay.
I just wasn't sure how it works with like who takes the lead with it being like an interstate crime, kind of being that he lived in one state, the crime occurred in another, he was apprehended in another, but also crossed through different states, and would they likely follow his path to try to recover the weapon? Because given the fact that, that would be a big piece to a conviction, just from past cases.
Well,
Just
they should be trying to run down that path that he took from the scene back to college campus. And they should be tracking all the cell phone towers. They should also be seeing if there's any cameras along the routes, anywhere he stopped, get gas, pay tolls. If his cell phone stopped for a period of time during that time period from after the homicide to return to campus, where was that? Go search that area, see if he ditched a knife there. I mean, stuff like that, with regards to how it works with different jurisdictions. So in this case, they're doing a warrant from Idaho in Washington state, and they're doing a warrant from Idaho in Pennsylvania state. Now, several things can occur. In this case, typically what I see from the Idaho-Washington connection, they've gotten permission from courts and district attorneys in Washington and law enforcement in Washington to have their people go there and process his apartment, and his the Idaho people, that is, go to his apartment and to his office on campus to process those warrants and process those scenes, looking for evidence associated with the crime in Idaho. Now, with regards to the car, several things can occur. They can fly crime scene investigators out, which I have done, and many in my command have done, have gone to other states and processed vehicles that were involved in crimes in New York in that state, with the permission of the law enforcement agency and district attorneys. All are on the same page. And then I've done that. Or they can flatbed the car back across country and process it in Idaho. I don't recommend that. I would rather it stay there. It's protected. Leave it there in an environment like that, and then let me go there and process the car, because it's safer where it is than to try to drive it across country. And so many things can go wrong.
Accidents, so forth.
Yeah, so forth. So leave it there, and then let us go there. Now, connecting the dots on other cases. You may have cold cases of homicides in and around the Washington, Idaho area, and it could even stretch further than that.
Yeah, because some of them seem to be pretty similar in nature. I mean, and granted, take it with a grain of salt, but just given the connections to the different areas and stuff with Idaho, Washington, and a few other ones, I was just curious to see.
Oregon, too.
Yeah.
I mean, so you'd have to look at all of this. You got to get cell phone records, right? You got to get cell phone records to see if this person was in and around those other homicides.
Now that they have his DNA, though, does that get automatically put into CODAS, and then other agencies can run it through to what they've collected from their scenes, or?
It's already in. They submitted to CODAS their DNA, and any suspect DNA that they retrieved, that they eliminated the victims from, any suspect DNA that they retrieved from the scene, they put into CODAS. Okay, him not having criminal record, therefore he wouldn't be in CODAS, but there should be crime scene DNA in there that they need. If they haven't done so, I believe they would have already, but match unknown to unknown. Okay, so if those other cold cases, that may be similar in motive or similar in MO, that to what's going on here, or unsolved straight edge knife homicides, and there's DNA, suspect DNA in the CODAS system. Remember, because CODAS is combined offender plus its offender and crime scene. Okay, so if they search the crime scene DNA from around the country and see if his DNA matches unknown crime scene samples from other jurisdictions, so that has to be done if it hasn't already been done. But still, again, get phone records, get digital footprints, get GPS information. We see now that the car is a later model than was originally thought to be.
2015 or 2016, I think they said.
Yeah. So now, start looking at if he has satellite radio, start looking at information in there. A lot of times we had our experts on that tell you that a lot of times stuff gets written over in terms of the digital information that is saved on these cars.
Yeah, Tommy talked about the infotainment system in some of the newer and the later model vehicles has a lot of data in there. And even when you say, your contact download, do you want to download it? A lot of us say no, right? But he told us even when you say no, it still automatically does your contacts downloads. But I wanted to also say one more thing, because you asked about if other jurisdictions or if other federal agencies get involved. Yes, he crossed state lines after he committed a felony. And I know this from being in fugitive. To bring him back to Idaho, a U.S. Marshal is going to have to be with, because we always had to bring U.S. Marshals with us when we brought felons back to New York City outside of our state. We went to Pennsylvania, if we went to Connecticut, or if we went to Ohio, we were embedded with the U.S. Marshals Fugitive Task Force. So one member from, or two members from the Fugitive U.S. Marshal Service will accompany this perpetrator back to Idaho, and it'll just be a handoff. It's a formality. They don't conduct any investigations, but they are involved in it. And somebody asked too about the felony burglary charges. To enter and remain in a residence unlawfully to commit a crime constitutes burglary. So that's why we see those charges added into the, we'll see it in the probable cause affidavit. They'll talk about entering and remaining unlawfully and committing a crime therein.
Right. Unlawfully and without the consent of the owner and committing a crime therein.
No matter if the door was wide open, or if it doesn't necessarily mean you have to kick in a door to commit burglary. Just entering someone's dwelling unlawfully and also to commit a crime are, that's why you see that. They're dotting their I's and they're crossing their T's. But Jessica, as a fellow New Yorker, I'm proud that you came on and asked some great questions. Do you have anything else maybe that's not answered?
Not right now. I mean, there's so much that's not answered, but I don't know if we all have. We could speculate and talk about it all day, right? And yeah, it's just going to be interesting how it all unfolds. But, I think, a lot of the digital footprint that I learned was back to that Kelsey Breath case that I think was out that way too with Patrick Freese. And that's how they were able to track him down. And, so it's interesting because this guy that they arrested doesn't really seem to have a large online social media, footprint or, from what's being found thus far. But so it's going to be interesting to see the digital footprint that they're able to collect on him in what ways and how it links,
Well,
Ed, I want to add before. I don't want you to forget your thoughts. So go ahead, and I'll add it.
No, go ahead, Ed. I'm fine.
What we have to realize, Jess, is that this guy's digital footprint and online footprint could show us right now, or appear to us to be very small, but he could have went and started deleting some of his stuff that he had on his social media footprint. And the forensic experts, they have ways to extract that and get it back.
Right. Yeah, and I was just purely basing that off of like a older friend that said he had deleted all of this months ago, like before. I mean, and who knows what his thought process was then. But yeah, it would just be interesting to see how all that kind of plays out, and with the kind of theories that he was stalking, or which could be done in other ways, but sometimes it's easier to do behind a computer. But yeah, it's just definitely going to be interesting to see how this all plays out, given his schooling choices and his wanted to be career path, and now with this. So
Ed, I'm sorry I interrupted you. What was your thought process there? I'm going to get hell for that. So
no, not at all. I mean, he has therapists in his family, right? And I was wondering if he's been officially diagnosed with compulsive disorders, or also Asperger's. That would be interesting to see, because people are making online comparisons with him and the Sandy Hook mass murderer. So anyhow, that's all I had. Hey, thank you so much, Jessica.
Thank you.
You're awesome. Are you subscribed to the channel, Jess?
I am. Yeah, I found your channel through just this case. I don't even know how, just scrolling, and I subscribed when I started listening. It was good info. It's where I come to check in. So
excellent.
I appreciate it.
What part of the great state of New York? Not exactly, obviously, for security reasons, but are you upstate?
Right.
Or in the tri-state?
Upstate. Yeah, upstate, like Dutchess County.
Cool.
Okay.
Yeah, my sister's up in Brewster, so she's a little bit up north. But
yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
So
Well,
A little
stay
bit
warm.
further than that, but yeah.
Stay warm and Happy New Year.
Yeah.
keep the
Yes,
snowblower
you
ready.
too. Thank you.
Keep your snowblower ready.
Hey, Ron, okay.
All right, thanks, Jess.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, there she goes.
Ron, just before we move on, there's someone saying in the chat that I'm doing a great job of giving the defense attorney ammo to attack the evidence.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thanks. Okay.
They don't need me, folks. They don't need me. I'm just educating you.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if that person has that kind of a feeling, they're in the wrong place, because this is what we do. We educate, and all of this information is out there, and defense attorneys don't need Ed Wallace to help them. So that's a ridiculous statement. And I wish that one of the mods would go back and block that person. Anyways, here we go. AKA Suman is here, and she is a returning. When we do this, she jumps in. So hi, welcome in.
Hi guys, so awesome. And last time I got a chance to talk to DutyRon and tell him what a big fan I am. So Ed, I'm a big fan of yours too.
Oh, thank you so much.
And I just want to wish you guys a very happy New Year's Eve and a happy New Year to you and your family. I do have a couple of questions because I want to make it worth your while. And DutyRon, please keep your bleepers, everything ready in case I. Exactly. I don't want to trigger anybody. So
Where are you chiming in from?
Tampa, Florida.
Oh, nice.
Okay.
Welcome.
Yeah, we're so happy Sergeant Bill moved down here, so we're waiting for you guys to move as well at some point. So.
Oh, it's been a dream of mine to be a Floridian, but my wife is like an embedded tick. We're not leaving here.
It's hard at first. I used to live in Jersey City, right next to off of the Hudson, and then I moved. It's not bad. If Tom Brady can move, I think you guys can give it a shot. So
yeah, I want to.
What's your question, Suman?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. One is, and sorry if it's stupid, but Ed, I'm trying to make it very specific to the crime scene forensics. And by the way, I love the Friday forensics. Can a DNA tell more about the person than just their identity? Like, for example, can it say if there's elevated levels of rage or some other kind of genetic inclination to murder, or is it just the tests just show who the person is?
Well, currently the test that they're doing doesn't give you that kind of information. Can it give you not so much about that, but it can give you, as you can see with some of these privately run DNA testing sites, it can give you information about genetic diseases that you may be susceptible to. It could tell you your eye color, your hair color. It could tell you ethnicities and things of that nature. But the criminal DNA databases don't search for that and don't typically do that. But can you get a warrant and ask a court for permission to do some of these things? Absolutely.
And I'm assuming you're not going to tell me all the secrets of the trade. So it's good to know that it is possible. So that brings me to my second question. And this is, again, an internet rumor that I heard, so I'm not sure. So I'm going to try to make it a little bit kosher. I heard that there was an anonymous person who texted saying, hey, I'm the one who did it. I'm in Pennsylvania. And I put certain body parts, like the intestines, on the ceiling. So I don't want to go into details of that. But I guess my question is, by looking at the crime scene, other than just the number of stab wounds or something, is there other ways where just by, the kind of the devastation and the crime scene, can we tell if the person was just like a psychopathic murder where the target really didn't matter, it's just their satisfaction versus target?
Well, what's going to end up happening is there probably is going to be requests from the defense team to have him evaluated for his for mental illness, and so the defense will have their expert, the prosecutor will have their expert, and they will conduct independent reviews of this individual. Now, without regards to the other rumor stuff, I'm not going to get involved in any of that. You know, body parts here and there, or whatever the case may be. So, I mean, and again, if there were things taken from the body, if there was a missing digit or a finger or some, you know, only the law enforcement and the coroner's office would know that. And so we don't have any of that information. And I'm not going to speculate on any of those rumors.
We would never speak on it. Never.
Yeah.
Anybody that, let me just say this, anybody that has spoken on to that point is in my eyes disgusting, because we don't have any confirmation of it. We don't engage in any type of behavior that constitutes jagaloonism.
Got it.
You know, no, but from historical perspective of serial killers, if he turns out to be a serial killer, they have been known to take souvenirs, as they call them, of their crimes. And that has historically been the case with several mass serial killers.
And would his wounds have healed if he got any while he was committing the act?
Now, there should be some evidence, depending on there should be some scar, or there should be something. Depends on the type and severity of the injuries. If he had received any.
And DutyRon, you're amazing. While we're all like talking about this, you always end up thinking of the victims. So you're such a people's person, and you should never apologize for anything. You are awesome, and I am so privileged that I came across your channel. And I really appreciate your time today with me.
You know what I love about what you did here today is you had your questions written down. I saw you glancing down at your notes, which, hey, listen, look, if you're following me, you know that I take notes for and I have things in 2023, I'm going to have a second camera behind me, and you're going to see the shot. You get to see the back of my head a little bit, but I have all notes all across my monitors and sticky notes all over the place here. Because that's what anybody that's prepared and that knows that they're going to come and do something like this. So we appreciate that you did that. And I thank you for being a part of this great community here, because it's folks like you that makes this a great place. And I give thanks and praise, and I say this on my streams, but now I have you here with me. I give thanks and praise to folks like you and the many others who do this and come with respect, and you ask some tough questions and you ask some difficult questions, but you did it with respect, and that's what we appreciate about that. So thank you.
You're a hero. So thank you for everything you do. Happy New Year, and hopefully you don't have any new scars, DutyRon. Everything is healing well, and hope you have a healthy, happy New Year, both of you.
Thank you, my dear. Happy New Year, and God bless.
You too. Thank you.
Okay. Happy New Year.
All right, Ed. We have one more person, and then we're going to rock and roll. I thought I heard somebody chime in, but I guess they left.
Oh, okay. Yeah, there was somebody there, but she backed out.
Yeah, she backed out. Natasha Richardson, who's also a great friend and subscriber of this channel, she said, I appreciate you both and your clarity, as well as the insight on these cases.
Thank you.
Thank
Ben
you.
Ben is here.
Oh, Ben, as soon as you give us the thumbs up, we'll add you in. All right. I think we see a thumbs up from Ben. All right, just let us know where you're watching from. You could just say city or state, or just a state, whatever you're comfortable with, or country. Ben, welcome.
What's up? Can you guys hear me good?
Yeah.
Yeah, we hear you fine.
Where you from, Ben?
I'm from Surprise, Arizona.
Okay. Surprise.
Before I ask my question, I did want to say I'm going to be a Washington State student next year.
Okay, so you're in high school now?
Yeah, I'm a senior right now.
Okay.
This whole thing is just kind of crazy. I got accepted to Washington State like early November, and I'm actually going to be a criminal justice major next year. So,
what campus you going to? Seattle?
Pullman.
Pullman. Oh, you're going to Pullman. Okay. All right.
All right. What's your thoughts on this case, Ben?
So I definitely would have probably crossed paths with the person next year, most likely, because I heard that he was like a teacher's assistant. I'm not sure if that's like.
Yes, most PhD candidates have to do some teaching. Yeah, so you might have because he's in that department, and that's your major, right?
Yeah.
What do you want to focus on?
Well, my plan was to get like a bachelor's degree in criminal justice and then go into like the police force,
Okay.
and then like work my way up to a detective because that's kind of how I heard how it goes.
Okay.
Awesome. That's great.
So you have a question?
Yeah. So with the whole like collecting DNA stuff, like when you walk into a crime scene that's as gruesome as that one probably was, like where would you even start? Because it, like, you know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
there's just so many. It's just such a mess.
Let him know he has to watch our playlist because you covered this extensively.
Yeah.
We did.
If you go back to the last Saturday forensics that I did, I covered this extensively of how we do what's known as a walkthrough. We put our PPE on and we go in and we do a walkthrough, and I read the crime scene after a lot of training and certifications and years of experience. You be able to read the crime scene and see interactions and see movements between suspect and victim and understand these movements and what they're telling you and what these interactions are telling you. Understand how they got in and how they got out. And then based upon how they got in and how they got out, you'll start your crime scene from the entry point, if it was a forced entry or if they were already in there legitimately and then a crime broke out within, then you start within and then work your way to the way they escaped the crime scene. But it's a slow, methodical process. It requires a lot of patience. It requires people with good puzzle skills to be able to look at something and solve a puzzle. Okay. It's not something that you can read out of a book and just think you can go do this. It's going to take experience and years in training and so forth.
Okay, I didn't know that.
All right, so I wish you good luck.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you, Ben. I hope you subscribe to us two dusty old men who did this for many, many, many years. But we appreciate that you're watching, and good luck in your future endeavors in higher education. We wish you nothing but the best. And if you make it to the police department, go over to DutyRon.com and send us questions. We'd be happy to mentor you along your way.
Oh, awesome.
All right, stay in touch. Happy New Year.
Thanks, Ben.
You too. Happy New Year.
Take care. Bud. All right, there he goes. That was pretty awesome. I was surprised that we got somebody young watching us, Ed. It's usually folks from our age group and older, so that was great. Debbie, as soon as you give me the thumbs up, I'll add you in. I think I know who this is. This is our former, she's a retired law enforcement professional. So, Debbie, I'm going to add you into the stream. Welcome to Crime Time with DutyRon.
Hey, sorry, I'm still bedbound from my cancer treatment, but
stay strong, Debbie. Stay strong.
Stay strong.
Thank you. I just want to see if you could answer for the people. I know the answer to this, but could you, DutyRon and Ed, explain to the other people in the chat what happens to, like, if he has a roommate in the apartment they just entered, what happens to the roommate while they're doing their search? What happens to the roommate's stuff? Does it get searched while they're in there searching, going through there? And is that why they have Washington police with them, to make sure that the roommate's rights aren't violated? That kind of stuff.
Well, I don't know that he has a roommate. Maybe somebody in the
I don't
chat.
either. I'm just saying if he did.
If he did, then he'd be asked to be removed from the crime scene while the crime scene team processes. He would be asked if his what is exclusively his. For instance, if it's a multi-bedroom unit, like my son, when he was undergraduate at college, he shared an apartment that had 4 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms, but each one of those, and then common areas, the kitchen, the living room, the dining room, each one of those bedrooms had their own push-button lock on it, and so that area was exclusive to my son. Right. So in this case, if this roommate, if there was a roommate, had a bedroom, then that bedroom would be exclusive to him. Now, obviously, this person is going to be interviewed, okay, and but they're going to be removed from the scene while the scene is being processed. They'll stay out of the room that is exclusive to the roommate, and that the roommate's partner, the suspect in this case, the defendant, did not have access to, legitimate access to. But during the course of the interview, if there comes a point during the interview that that they find out that the suspect may have had access to what should have been exclusively the roommates, they may ask the roommate for consent to look in there for evidence of this crime. Now, if that roommate doesn't give consent, then they take what the roommate told them, go to the judge and say, Judge, can you give us another warrant to go look in this area of the apartment?
Right. Search warrants are very specific, and that's what they executed there, a search warrant. So it is very specific because I've done, and I've executed arguably hundreds, perhaps, close to 1,000 search warrants over my time. I've been involved in, assisting in these things because it was a unit that I was in, and that's all we did all day, every day. The judge will give you specific areas. And as Ed said, if you need to go back and you want to get into it in another area, you got to get permission. Otherwise, it's an unlawful search. But I feel strongly that, they are doing everything, dotting their I's and crossing their T's. They know they're on not only the national, but the international spotlight and stand. So everything that's going forward and they're doing right now is double crossing your T's and dotting your I's. That's for sure. So, Debbie, I am so happy that you came in here with us. I want to wish you nothing but health and prosperity and the best in 2023 in your cancer fight. And you know what? Your service and your previous, service to your department, I want to say thank you for that too. So God bless you. And if there's any other questions that you have, we'll blast them out here. But I just definitely want to send you our best.
Yeah, no, not in relation to the other thing is, what if he does have a roommate, which I don't know that he does, but if he did have a roommate, and if for some reason the roommate was involved, like was a driver or was somehow involved, is there any way he could take like the knife or whatever and hide it in his room and hide it from them that's searching?
Well, those are all possibilities, but the investigation would have to, find that out. Okay. I think we've, answered the majority of what you were questioning us about.
That's true.
And listen, from two cancer survivors here, both DutyRon and myself, we wish you nothing but the best and hopefully a healthier and happier new year.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Bye.
Right.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Talk to you soon. Thank you for all your support. There she goes. You're welcome. Ed, we're over an hour. I tried to condense this and keep it an hour and 22. Shame on us. But I know everybody has a lot of questions. And that's what I want to ask is that if you guys have further questions, please leave it down below in the comments section. Go over to DutyRon.com. Leave some questions for us over there. Make sure you like and subscribe. Here, look, here's somebody who I arrested in 2008. I got arrested by DutyRon back in 2008, but I love you, man. Hey, listen, you do the crime, you got to do the time. So I know that if I collared you and I in fact did lock you up, that most of the guys who I came in contact with, I treated with respect. Respect is a two-way street, and I did that with everybody that I came into contact with when it came to my profession. But yeah, I want to encourage everyone to like and subscribe to this community. We are two retired New York City police detectives. Ed is a crime scene and a DNA expert. He's got so much experience in all facets of crime scene and evidence collection. We're going to be chiming in on this case. We're going to continue to talk about it. The criminal defense attorney, Pete Carrusco, is going to join us after the new year. And Ed and I have lots and lots more to talk to you about in this case as it unfolds. Isn't that right, Ed?
Oh, absolutely. 100%.
Hey, let's wrap it up and wish everyone a happy, healthy, and health comes first. Without health, you got nothing. And Ed and I know this. Ed knows it all too well. If you're not healthy, you can have all the money in the world. You're not going to, that's the main focus. So health and prosperity and all good things to everybody here in the chat. The replay viewers, the mods, we have the best. All of you community members, the new channel members, the new Patreon supporters, Ed and I appreciate it because with your support is the way we're able to do this. So thank you. Ed, you got anything for the troops before we close?
You know it, folks. Stay safe, stay prepared, watch your six. Hey, and as we get off the air, go jump on Off the Cuff. They're live right now.
Oh yeah, that's right. Shoot. And they started at 2. So let's everybody go on over and watch Police Off the Cuff. I'll link it down below in the description. Stay safe, and God bless everybody. I like to always end this with God bless the world, God bless the United States of America, and God bless each and every one of us here in the chat. And let's send a special prayers and positive vibes to all the people involved in this investigation and prosecution in Idaho. God bless, and we'll talk to you soon.
Happy New Year, folks.
Happy New Year, guys. Peace.